We have a vision to be an international university of choice, anchored in Africa, dynamically shaping the future. Our mission is to inspire our community to transform and serve humanity through innovation and the collaborative pursuit of knowledge. To fully embrace the digital universe which we are beginning to inhabit, this is what we do at the University of Johannesburg. UJ, where the whole is far greater than the sum of its parts.
I would like to extend a very warm welcome to everybody that has just joined us. My name is Maria Frahm-Arp, and I am the Executive Director of the Library at the University of Johannesburg. We are very excited about our conference. It is the first time that we are streaming a conference live on Facebook and doing an entire conference virtually. So a huge thank you to the Association of Commonwealth Universities that has partnered with us in this venture. And also a very big thank you to all our sponsors. Without you, this wouldn't have been possible. I would like to warmly welcome everybody from all over the world. Today is, like yesterday, a very international day, and we have speakers from Trinidad and Tobago all the way through to Hong Kong. So in advance, a thank you to all those of you who have woken up early in the morning or are going to bed late in the evening so that you can be with us. I hope that you are going to enjoy this conference with us. Our first speaker for today is Professor Saurabh Sinha, who is the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research and Internationalisation at the University of Johannesburg. But due to an emergency, he is not able to be with us today, and he is going to be, or we are going to be hearing a presentation that he recorded for us in advance. So we won't be able to ask him any questions, but I work very closely with him. So if there is a burning question that comes out of what he says, I still encourage you to put the chat question up and I will see if I can answer it for you. So we're going over to a virtual recording from Prof Saurabh Sinha.
Firstly, I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to present a topic which would have in the past been just a topic on online education. I use the word inclusive online education because I think there's certain opportunities that emerge and in the era of the COVID-19 period. Now, when pandemics hit the world, there is an old saying that it hits the world like a crisis, and Winston Churchill had at one point said that never let a good crisis go to a waste. And so what we have been trying to look at is, how do we actually evolve online education, something that many institutions have been trying to do around the world with different levels of success. Whatever it is, coronavirus has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. But the rupture exists, and in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us the chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Now, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. Now, in retrospection, I thought to engage you briefly on a text which is written by Thomas Friedman. And Thomas Friedman's text is called "Thank You for Being Late." It's a good text to look at because it brings about a moment of pause, perhaps the kind of pause that many around the world experience during the coronavirus pandemic. There were numerous advances at the time that we did not realize, but would in fact have a profound evolution when it comes to technology. Now, the 4.0 is an interesting component because it enables human adaptability to leapfrog to and take benefit of the technological revolution. Now, the technological revolution, to some extent, has in fact been expedited because of different measures of lockdown that has emanated around the world with COVID-19. And in this context, I want to go back a few years ago. In 2015, the world adopted, a number of countries that are member states of the United Nations adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. So if you had to analyze COVID-19, these lenses that are offered here may give you different perspectives. Now, while we've had these lockdown provisions, it also became interesting that the environment had favorable implications as we reduced our travel, as we reduced movement and interaction with the environment as we would conventionally do. There were also techno-economic implications. There were rumors of whether COVID-19 and 5G technology has a connection. And of course, we know that it is not the case. But it did come up, and it may have come about because of these interrelated connections. If we look at the world and techno-economics, we're able to bring about a holistic picture that helps us to design solutions that minimize unintended consequences. We then found that over the December and particularly late January period, that COVID-19 became quite prominent. And we started to wonder that this very important aspect of diversity, which enables quality in our programs, in our academic programs, that this diversity has the potential for compromise. But what is clear is that how we have viewed the economic situation in one part of the world, and the world is much more connected than ever before, is that the economic situation will change. Now, what would the post-COVID-19 period look like? We can, of course, wait and hope that, maybe one view is that, and I often hear that, when things would become normal. We were talking about it at the university in one of our meetings today, and one of my colleagues mentioned, well, when we can all go back to the university. And in our reflection, we reflected, well, we can't really say that because we don't know what will be and when will be the readiness in terms of the vaccine. We do not know what type of immunity will develop. We do not know yet what is the meaning of immunity in the context of COVID-19. It is too early to be able to deduce whether a particular antibody is effective. What is the tau? What is the lifespan of the antibody that that people who are recovering, what type of antibody do they attain? These are unknowns at this point. So what we have also been seeing at this time is that, more people are working from home where the possibility remains, which is not possible for everyone. And these variations are also common around the world. Now, I want to give you a picture of South Africa. And this is a picture from Cape Town. On the left-hand side, the same city, these two pictures are taken perhaps about 15 minutes apart if you were driving. And what you see is the city which also has deep poverty. So when we are talking about, developing education solutions, how do we contend and develop education solutions in a country with these deep contrasts? Perhaps it is also reflective of a world where there are deep contrasts of different kinds. Now, what we have done as a university is we have made available data provision as well as device provision for people who do not have the affordability but at the same time, we don't have all the answers, because we know that some of our students are living in very poor areas where, despite the fact that they may have device and data, they may not have the connectivity, there may not be a mobile network. What was also interesting is some of the design work that you've seen, fully recognizing, by the way, that the 3D printing is not necessarily a scalable solution. We also designed some ventilators because ventilators are quite expensive. The world came together and we started to leverage an open source movement. When humanity has such a need to try to save and protect itself, we come together and we see how we can practice, and we can have best practice that comes together. Now, there are groups such as on Facebook that has open source material that is available, which progresses very quickly in terms of medical supplies and how it can be produced in a cost-effective way. And so there is an important component here, and the takeaway from these 3 slides is that despite our challenges as a globe, we find that we have explored new innovations, and we have come together and we have explored open source. On the other hand, there are certain components, like this particular meeting that we're having. We're actually having it over an online medium, and a lot of the things which we always argued upon, that there must have in-person presence. It is not that we are saying that those in-person engagements must be replaced. But what is interesting is our ability to be more conducive to augmented ways of thinking. Now, at the university, we often had flexibility for academic staff to work from home, for instance, from time to time, but we did not have that flexibility for professional support staff. In some cases, they're able to be much more productive from their environments, and we're also finding that the limitations of the situation has enabled them to be creative in ways that we haven't seen before. So if we have to take the lenses that we used earlier on to look at COVID-19, and if we have to look at higher education in the same way, we start to get new perspectives about higher education. Now, we have to be very competitive, or we have to be sufficiently collaborative, so that post-COVID, post this period of COVID-19, nothing stops another institution from entering into our domain and providing a service which is very competitive, because we find that the borders that we have, not that they were not virtualizing in the past, but they now are much more virtual because of COVID-19, much more than ever before. So it forces us to actually start to think collaboratively, as we also realize that our business models can actually be significantly challenged post-COVID. We already see that some of our international students who pursued qualifications in South Africa was perhaps due to the cost that they were paying a lower fee, but for high quality of higher education. But now the cost margins are starting to become reduced, and other players are entering the market. So of course, there's also a social aspect to it, is that especially in countries where there's deep inequality, that while there are areas that are progressing in an online way, there are other areas that are deeply suffering because they do not have food, they do not have online connectivity, and there is a potential for a social unrest unless we are able to manage economic implications in the right way and at the right time. The aspect of the fourth industrial revolution gets amplified. So in terms of inclusive online education, and on the other side, I have these pillars that we must keep in mind of inclusivity, of innovation, of integrity, and of infrastructure, as there's more data in terms of internet traffic that is in the internet space or the channels, much more than ever before. Now, while I present this, there is another very important dimension to keep in mind that is also happening. Is as all of this online world is progressing, on the other hand, we're also seeing aspect of cybersecurity that is increasing. And we are also seeing that, data is being collected much more than ever before. But data, when it is fused together, it may have new dimensions which we may not have understood in terms of ethical clearance, and it inevitably has the potential of compromising privacy. So it is something to keep in mind, and the ethics of how data is collected needs to be kept in mind. And at the same time, we know that in the dark web, we have had leaks of passwords, for example, Zoom, that there has been Zoom hacks, where Zoom passwords have been in the dark web and bots have taken that over, hackers have taken that over. And there is always a potential that there may be a hack during an online session. When it comes to delivering the curriculum, there are six tenets which has been written by Sarki Gravitt, who is a professor and our executive dean of the Faculty of Education. Now, one of the things that I do really believe in is a Benjamin Franklin statement that says, it's simple. It says, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. How people learn is different. And we have often in a classroom environment made certain assumptions that people probably learn similarly. And there is a component of inclusivity that comes about, as one very obvious case is that lectures can be archived and people can go back to those lectures. They can have emphasis areas. And the instructor, if the student has allowed for collecting the data or has opted in to collect data, the lecturer or the instructor can get that information and at an aggregate level can then see what are the areas of that particular module or course. So when we are delivering our videos, it often has to be short clips. Another important component of inclusivity is languages. On YouTube as well as on the Zoom platform, automatically translation is possible, transcription is possible. Now, I did talk about data ethics earlier on, and so suddenly the value of data as in progressing the individual becomes more pronounced. On the other hand, if you are in programs such as in engineering programs where you need to do lab work, and lab work needs to be done hand in glove to be able to project your learning experience, and it is not as easy. So we've had to be really thinking out of the box, unusually to what the classroom environment means. On the other hand, we are getting some very interesting feedback from our students who have learned about the cost of electricity in the city, but have never experienced how do you actually realize an electrification in the rural area. And so now they're building solutions in their own environments, and they're starting to see those multiple areas of social dynamics, of techno-economics, of earth systems, and of geopolitics integrating together into their learning experience. Now, we are, of course, saying, how do we bring about an academic framework over what they are doing in their local areas so that we can assess? And so what we've also tried to do is to bring them into connectivity, whether it is by telephone, whether it is by online means, whether it is peer-to-peer support. How do we engage external examiners into this mix so that there's external moderation and the quality assurance processes can still be emulated? And I think that the COVID-19 period is challenging us and saying perhaps the world needs to think differently, and maybe that is the normality that we have been seeking. And that going back into the old way may not necessarily be the best way. So from an accreditation point of view, there are certain benefits. There is an accreditation process is sample-based. People come in, they look at your different files, they look at exam papers, they look at, what is the textbook. And if you think about it, a lot of those things also have a routine component. how do we use the learning management system, which is an online system, to automate part of those routine systems? And if we're asking program evaluators to go and engage with routine processes, we must maybe ask, is that what we want of program evaluators? Can we automate what they do in terms of the routine process using machine learning algorithms, because we are accumulating so much data? Can we utilize that data to automate parts of it so that the accreditation and the program evaluation component is based on a narrative? It is based on a qualitative engagement process where we are able to intellectually engage and automate parts of an accreditation process which is redundant. And I think that there is some room for us to be thinking outside of the box once more, also in the accreditation area. Now, I will be concluding that, we know pandemics. The last pandemic was almost 100 years ago, the big pandemic of the Spanish flu. And at that time, we saw that the world changed after that. If we go back several centuries, we find that, I think it was Newton who once said that, some of the gravity and his experience of gravity and, equations and formulation of gravity actually came about due to the lockdown. And so pandemics have had this ability, despite the fact that the period and the time feels negative, that there are opportunities that emerge, and how do we take the best of what is coming out of during this period, retain, sustain, and grow that kind of thinking. So that the post-corona world is a world that we have shaped and not a world that we have been shaped by. The last part is the aspect of the competitive and collaborative landscape. Now I know several friends that are here at this particular workshop, and I can see that some of you are also adding to some comments. But suddenly we're able to find new friends. How do we retain those friendships so that we're able to utilize that collaborative landscape? So there is a real opportunity for us. There are also certain dangers, like the cybersecurity, the aspect of leaving people behind in those that cannot be connected, but at the same time to expand on online connectedness such that we can use that as an avenue to build inclusivity.
And so in his absence, we say thank you very much to Professor Saurabh Sinha for that very interesting discussion.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.